Okay, we are recording and we should have some people popping in here soon. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I'm Janda. I'm the coordinator of the EnviroHouse, also a curator of sorts. With me is Jenny Call, who many of you have seen before. Jenny is our garden, fruit tree, agricultural specialist who presents for us. She represents Gardens here. And I'm going to, while we're introducing things, I'm going to launch a poll to find out how you heard about us. I will leave that up for a few minutes. And if you have not done webinars before, I'm guessing by now, after this long, people all have, but there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and it should be at the bottom in a menu bar. You can use the Q&A, but I prefer you use chat if you can, because then that way everybody can see your questions and the answers, and you can copy them at the end. The chat has a drop-down feature. If you open that and click it so that everyone can see it instead of just the panelist and the host. That way other people can see your questions and they can also see all the answers. And we will have you muted and your cameras will be off, but we are being recorded. So I'm going to launch the poll, and then did I cover all my little points here, Jenny? No. Our next webinar is coming up on the 26th with Jenny, and we'll be talking about fruit tree selection, what grows well in our territory here, and how to select and how to care for the fruit trees. And mason bees love fruit trees. That's one of the primary things that feed them and that they pollinate. So if you haven't signed up for that, you can go to the cityoftacoma.org/EnviroHouse website and do so. And I will put that in the chat. And then I'll throw in other things as I think of them. But meanwhile, Jenny is a multitasking person. Jenny is a teacher, an elementary teacher. She grew up on a farm in Fife. She has an ag degree. She lives on a little small farm. She's got chickens and trees and critters and all kinds of things. And she's got a lot of experience in all of the topics that she talks about. She's representing Gardensphere, and for those of you who are joining us today, Jenny will go into a little more detail, but if you are interested in getting mason bees when you get through, and I will repeat this again at the end, Gardensphere is offering this weekend only a 25% off discount. We hadn't figured out a way to get a coupon to you, but I can provide participant names, and if you go in and go into the store and tell them today or tomorrow that you watched the webinar and would like to take advantage of that discount to get a house or cocoons or mason bee supplies, garden gloves maybe, I don't know. You can go check with them. So Jenny, why don't you tell a little more about yourself, and I'm going to leave the poll up for a few minutes until.
Okay. Yeah, so I am Jenny Call and I work with Gardensphere. I am also a classroom educator. I have a degree in sustainable agriculture. I have a small farm in Midland. I'm here in Pierce County. I grew up in Fife when it was all, oh, sorry about that, cat. I got lots of critters. I've got geese and ducks and chickens and all those fun farm animals. And I grew up in Fife, and my father was a huge in sustainable agriculture, even in the 70s and 80s. So I learned a lot from him, along with learning so much in the sustainable agriculture program that I went to. Today we're going to talk about mason bees and how wonderful they are and how cool they are.
So let me share the poll information, and then we will end the poll, and hopefully some more people will be coming in. We have, last I looked, I think we had about 75 registered. So we've got about a third of you here. So we'll see if some more join us.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm going to end the poll. Just about 77% saw this on Facebook and another 22 on the EnviroNews. Can you see
Wow.
that?
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of Facebook or an advertisement.
Well, we did a
That's
paid ad
great.
this time. So we reached, I don't think 2,500 people with the paid ad.
Wow.
That was
That is
cool.
really great. It's good to have
Yeah.
so many people participating, learning about this stuff. So
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing that. And Jenny, why don't you take it away, and I will jump in if we have questions. Jenny's really good at following the chat and answering questions or leaving them until later. She'll let you know if it comes up as something that we talk about in the webinar, and she'll address it later. But if she doesn't see it, I will pop in and be up there to add to it. So
yeah, I'll try to get it.
and if they're real personal questions, hold them at the end, because we want to keep the thing moving a little bit for people. So we'll see you all in a bit.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with you. I did at the end, I have some samples of a particular type of mason bee house and the tubes as well. So I'm going to show you them now, but I'm also going to show at the end just in case somebody has to leave. So we have casings and the tubes that the mason bees would live in. So this is the harder cardboard, and then this is a more flexible cardboard, and it fits right inside the tube like that. And I'll explain a lot about this, but just the gist is that it makes it really easy to keep your mason bee houses nice and clean, and to see your cocoons when it comes time to bring your house and take your house down for the winter. And then this is a PVC mason bee house. I have one just like this actually sitting right outside the window here, and all of mine have mud all over them because they're all mudded over. But this is one of the styles that you can use, and the smaller tubes, they fit right inside there. I can get it in there at this angle. Those fit right inside there, and then they're easy to take in and out. So I just wanted to show you that before we started, because I know once I start my presentation, sometimes I forget. And then I'll show that at the end as well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with y'all.
And Jenny, mention again, or I will, if you join us late, we are being recorded, and please use the chat and check either the ellipsis or where it says to, and mark it for everyone so everyone can see your question and the answers, and then you can copy those at the end.
Yeah, and everybody will be able to see your question, and we'll be able to answer, and it might be a question that somebody else had too. So all right, here we go. Go ahead and bring it up. So we are talking about mason bees today, and we have the little blue orchard mason bee. This is the closest up picture I could find. The ones that I take of our mason bees here at the house on the farm aren't as awesome. But you can see from this picture that they look just so incredibly similar to black flies, right? The big black flies. And so in end of February, March, depending on kind of when we start getting that warming trend of a consistent 50 to 55 degrees during the day, and we don't have too much freezing at night, you'll see that the black flies also kind of emerge at the same time as our mason bees start coming out of their cocoons. So they look very, very similar. But the little mason bee will have that blue iridescence to it, whereas the black flies don't have nearly as much iridescent color to them. So just be careful when you're doing a shoe fly, because they will definitely trick you. I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat in the very bottom here, just so we can kind of keep track of that as well. So reasons to have mason bees. There's so many reasons to have mason bees. The biggest one is to increase your fruit yield and help your berry crops along. They come around, they're the earliest emerging pollinator, and they will pollinate our early plums, early onset fruit trees are the big one that they pollinate first. They are a part of our natural ecosystem. Those blue orchard mason bees are a native bee, so they are out and about, and sometimes they will just show up if you provide the housing for them. I know, like with mine, I just put it up and the mason bees pollinated it completely, which was really cool. So I know we have our native bees and native other native pollinators are out and about, but our cute little native pollinator mason bees are having a good time. They're really fun to watch. You can see the progression from when they are emerging. You can see the mud being kind of eaten open, and then as the season goes on through the end of June, they're just the mudding. You go, oh, 4 of them are completely mudded over now. Oh, let's look in 2 more days. And they're like, oh, there's 10 that are all mudded over, so it's fun for observation and just kind of being excited about having those pollinators in your space. Also, the mason bees are super, super docile. Okay. They're not going to get in your face. They're not going to get super mad and try to sting you. And the males can't sting. So, they're just kind of doing their thing. They're pollinating and laying their eggs and doing their business. And they're pretty solitary as well. They're only really interacting during mating season, when they're mating and laying their, then they go lay their eggs and, they do their thing. So, they're pretty chill little pollinators, which I think is really nice. Here are some of the examples of our fruits. So we have our apples. I know here in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of people have early season apples. Mason bees definitely benefit you. They are going to come around and they're going to pollinate all of those apple trees that are early ripening apples. We have our June bearing strawberries over here, and the raspberries. Here is our first poll question, and it is all about your experience. So what is your experience hosting the mason bees? I have never hosted mason bees before. I'm interested. I've had them, but I didn't see any bees. I've had a mason bee house. But something was wrong. Something happened and I had some pest issues. I need help with setup or anything else that you're thinking about there. Yes, we will definitely get to location, and that comes up quite quickly. Bathhouses and mason bee houses, they really have different requirements. I'm just going to be focusing on mason bee housing today, and they are going to be facing east.
Almost everybody that's in here has answered, so
yeah,
I'll give you about 20 more seconds here, and then I'm going to end the poll and share the results, and then Jenny will go on with the rest of it.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of people said that have never had a mason bee spot before so far, 46%.
Right.
So that's a lot. That's a lot, which is great that you're here.
So everyone can see the results now.
Yeah, this is great. Would nest in my patio umbrella screw holes. Oh yeah, the screw holes must have been just the right size. You're gonna find mason bees are because they are a native pollinator. They're gonna nest wherever they find the right size holes. So yeah, that's very cool.
Okay.
All right, go for it, Janda.
Did it close? Because I stopped sharing.
Yeah, you can. Did you share the results?
I did.
Okay, perfect. There we go. All right, how cool.
Yeah, so I'm going to stop sharing again and hope it comes back up. it gone now?
Oh yeah, it's been on the whole time.
Okay,
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah, this is great. This is really great. Didn't see any of the bees. Yeah, that can happen. That can happen. Yeah, it looks like we have Christine leaves them up year round. Yeah, cool. All right. So, oh, you were gifted. Someone was gifted a couple of houses for Christmas. Well, excellent. That'll be fun. It looks like the majority of you are you're new to Mason bees. So this will be a great session for you. And those of you who have questions or concerns, absolutely put those questions in the chat. So where are they going to live? Where are they going to live? You want them to be easily accessible because you will have to clean them out periodically. The overhang for your house should be 2 to 3 inches. I really like the shape of this teardrop house, not only because it has a nice overhang, but it also has a little hole up there where if you are new to Mason bees, you would put the cocoons in that little part right here. And they would then fly out when they were totally emerged, which is pretty awesome. It's a nice one. It's pretty solid, easy to hang. The openings you can see we're using, they need to be 1/4 to 3/8 inches in diameter, the holes. It's very specific for a mason bee. Now, different pollinators have different requirements, right? So if the holes are a little bit bigger, you may get a different pollinator. If they're too small, again, you'll get a different pollinator. So this is very specific to our mason bees. And the tubes that you purchase, the exterior harder cardboard tube and the interior insert tube are both totally fine to use. And we've got a 3/8 and then we've got a 1/4 inch. So, and they nest right into each other. So both of those will work really nicely. You want your mason bee house to be really no longer than 8 inches deep for the tubes, right? So the tubes, this is about 3.5, 4 inches long, the tubes themselves. And you want to have that 2 to 3 inches of room on the end. If you have a little bit more, that's fine. 6 to 8 inches deep for your house is perfect. You don't really want to go any deeper than 8 inches. Okay. You want to face them eastward in a protected location. So where I have mine, I have it facing east, and it's underneath my eaves in my house. So it just kind of sits up high, sits under the eaves there, and under that awning. And that seems to work really, really well. They get that nice warm sun in the morning, but they don't get overheated with the southward sun, and they don't get too cold with the northern exposure, and then they don't get much more sun exposure towards the east, towards the west, excuse me. So when they're facing east, they're getting a really nice morning sun, getting a little bit heated up so they can kind of stretch and move their bodies around and then get out and go. And then it's nice and cool in the afternoon when we have our hotter temperatures. So let's see. Here are some examples of our mason bee houses. They all have, except for the block, right? And the block you can see is inside of this house. When you do buy the blocks, you can see how there's a band around this this block here, and that's because you can take them apart. Getting a wood block that is that you can take apart is key for cleanliness and for the health of your bees. If you get a full block, like this house here has got a wonderful overhang, but it is a full block. You have to actually go in after a while, and you're going to have to drill those holes back out because they get kind of mucked up. And then we have the PVC. Now I've got the PVC here at our house, on the house here. They're at the EnviroHouse as well. They're super, super accessible, easy to clean, easy to work. They don't break down because they are that PVC. But again, we're noticing that we've got that nice overhang. There's enough space. This one, the only thing I don't like about this one is that it is a little bit shallow. Okay. It is a little bit shallow. And then it looks like we have gifts for Christmas.
I think the one about if you have
Yeah, different species will get in there. Yeah, different pollinators will come in if the holes are variable sizes. Absolutely. And then how close should the houses be to my orchard? These pollinators, as long as it's within, a mile or two, you're gonna see pollination. The closer the better. Definitely. But they're gonna go out and pollinate if no matter where they are. They're gonna seek that food because they're hungry and they need to mate and lay their eggs. And then we'll get to where to purchase all the tubes and the accoutrement for your wonderful mason houses. Things to avoid. I've already spoken about the wood and the drilled wood blocks because it does take some upkeep. If you end up with mites, it might be difficult to get them cleaned out. Sometimes the liners. So with the tubes, you have the insert, which would be also the liner. Sometimes they don't fit inside for easy cleaning and for your bees and keeping an eye on them. You want to avoid leaning your mason bee upward. If it's leaning upward, what's going to happen, just like in this picture here, moisture, water, rain, all of that's going to go right in there, and they're going to be damaged. You'll have water settling in your house on the back end there, and it just will have a lot of issues and bee death as a result. Shallow isn't necessarily a good thing because then they can't lay enough in there. And then, you could have 4 inches, right? You could do it, and we could do some experimenting, what do they like better? Do they like, 4 inches, 6 inches, 8 inches? But a really shallow house is also going to be problematic. Mounting in full sun. So say your southwest, south facing directions, they're going to get too hot. And if they're unprotected, if they don't have that overhang, you're going to have weather issues, the water, direct sun, all these things. But then you also have like a flicker might find your house and be like, woohoo. I mean, the flicker might find it anyway, but without the overhang and without that protection, the flicker is going to have even more incentive to come on in and have a feast. So this picture is a great non-example of a mason bee house. Let's check that chat really quick. Okay, good. Okay. Using a bee house as a lunchbox. Yes, we will talk about that as well. It's time for our next poll. So what kind of mason bee house do you think you would be interested in? So we've got the PVC, the wood block, an open house with tubes. You're not quite sure, you want to learn some more, or any other? To answer that question about that, your black Phoebe getting in there. Once they have laid, there is, you can take just a nice screening mesh and put it over the opening of your mason bee house, and it'll deter other pests getting in there and having a snack. So, and you would do that after in July, after they've finished mating and everything's been mudded over. So, yeah, I know.
An earlier question about how close to the house the orchard needs to be. They range about a mile, don't they, or more?
Yeah. I said about a mile or two, I talked about it just a little bit earlier. It's about a mile or two, but the closer the better always. Yeah, they fly around. They're going to look for the food. If you have food, they're gonna stick closer to home. If you don't have enough food for them, they're gonna go search it out. I mean, they're a native pollinator, so they know the terrain and the area, so they're pretty good about it.
I'm going to end the poll. I think we may have a couple people who have called in which case they can't see the poll or can't answer it. So
cool. So we've got open house of tubes. That's great. Yeah, the tubes are make a huge difference. I really, really recommend if you're going to do a house, no matter what type of house you have or enclosure for them, using those tubes, just, keeping the mason bees healthy and being able to keep a good look on them is really, really good. You'll be able to manage them and share them easily. Cool.
So you can see the results, right?
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Okay.
All right. So seeding your house. When you begin, okay, you are going to use the mason bee seed as little cocoons, and that's a great picture of a mason bee just starting to emerge. It's really great. So they're really tiny, and you'll just place the mason bee right at the end of the tube there, right at the end of the tubes, or right at the edge of the holes for your house. You'll place them in there. You'll give them a little bop in, and then once it's warm enough, they will gently emerge, and they'll do their thing. There are lots of different places you can get your mason bee seed and your cocoons, and Garden Sphere, we have them now, so you can purchase them now. But there are other nurseries. I know different nurseries have them as well in the area, and so you'll put them in there. You can, if they are coming in a little box and they have a little hole in the box, and you just take off the tape. You can set it if it's a brand new house. You can just set it right in there, and then wait till they all emerge. Take the box away, and then put more tubes in there for your mason bees. That works just as well. Okay, the females are going to be a little bit larger than the males, and you're going to be purchasing your mason bees January through April, and that really is like the first part of April. Most of the time they are all gone by then, and our mason bees are out working in April. So so that's great. That's awesome. Okay, my tubes, I'm gonna go ahead and go into the chat really quick. My tubes are 2.5 inches long. These are not for mason bees, probably not for mason bees would be my guess. But give them a try. I think it's worth it giving it a try. It's absolutely worth it. I would say throw them in there. It's the diameter, if the diameter is just right, I say go for it. Because you're going to see bees that hop in there and they're like, house. Okay. Yeah, so with those of you who are unsure about what kind of houses to get, I'm glad you're here to do this part. So this is the very beginning, like you've purchased your housing, and you're seeding your house. Here is the timeline. So in January, the mason bees are in a cool, dry place. If you have an established house, like the houses at my folks' house, we keep them in an old, like college size fridge. And it's nice and cool and dry in there. And in January, if you don't have an established house, then you would be purchasing your house and finding a mason bee cocoon site, source, finding where you're going to get your mason bee seed, that kind of thing in January. And we are in February now. So if you haven't got your house, this is the time to do it. February, about end of the month, you're going to put the houses outside. If you haven't already, you can get them in place earlier. I just wouldn't put the mason bee cocoons, the seed, outside quite yet. We are not consistently at a 50-degree temp during the day. Normally towards the end of the month, in that last week of February, where we kind of go from February into March, we have been in the last 4 years very consistently at about 50 degrees during the day during that last week of February. And so then I would put my mason bee seed out. And so they have that consistent temperature. If we drop really cool, a lot of times what happens is we have a larger die off of the mason bees. And so really waiting until we have that consistent about 50 degrees during the day temp is important. And at that point, you're also going to, if you have an established house, you're going to go in, replace any inserts or tubes that have worn out. The inserts you're going to replace completely. You're going to clean your house, of course, after all of your mason bees have emerged. Clean it out, refresh it, get it ready for egg laying. And then in March and June, this is where all the busy work happens. So they are pollinating, they're laying eggs, they're mudding. You can get at least, sometimes you can get 30 to 35 sealed chambers. And in those tubes, it's pretty impressive. So I've opened up a tube before and I've had, I've had like 10 full cocoons, lots of sealed chambers. Some of the eggs don't go to fruition, things like that. But it's really neat how many mason bee eggs are laid in a season. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to go check the chat really quick. Can mason bees be harmed by inserting the liners or drilling the holes out? So at that point, the mason bees should be all gone. When you're replacing everything, they're out doing their business. So you want to go ahead and refresh. If you have the full wood blocks, you're re-drilling holes if you need to. Nothing should be in there when you're doing those things. They should be out. They should all be emerged. Look for all the broken mud holes and do your cleaning. When no mason bees are in there, nobody is harmed. But you want to do that quickly and then get those houses back up because they're going to start. They need to have a place to lay their eggs. And so that's going to be kind of a quick changeover. If they're not maintained and they're left outside, a lot of times you'll have, like this year, I didn't take mine down here on the farm. So I've been watching them. I've had a few, I've had one squirrel pull a tube completely out. Which was fun to watch. And then I've had one get jostled and moved forward. And so I've just been keeping an eye on them. They're in a spot that I can watch every day and consistently make sure that they're doing okay. Of course, the one that got, thrown out, the squirrel did open it up. I just kind of watched to see what was going to happen. And so, of course, those haven't made it. It kind of depends on the temperature. I have pulled a few out to see if I have any mites and chalk brood and stuff. And I was good in the two that I pulled out. I was a-okay, so I'm not really too worried about it. But if you do leave them out all season and we have this is kind of what I'm worried about, is that if we have a spat of warm weather, which sometimes we do, and then all of a sudden it drops significantly, yes, there's going to be some die off because I'm not controlling when I'm putting them out. I am going to wait until I see the first apple blossoms come out at my parents' property. Which is generally that first week of March, second week of March, and then I'll put the mason's bees out because then I know we have food for them. So it kind of depends on how you're feeling about it. You can leave them out, and that's okay. But then you're at the will of nature, or you can take them down when it's time and kind of control that a little bit so that you can put them back out when there's food for them. Yeah, good question. Ideal height. Mine is a 1-story house, so I just put it under the eaves there. So 10 feet, 10 feet. Height really isn't an issue too much. So just put it, where it's accessible. If it's too high, you're not going to want to go get them and go check them out. It's going to be a hassle to bring a ladder out and do those things. So really what it is making it accessible to you. That's what I really like to put forth, is if it's accessible to you, then you're more likely to engage with the mason bees and the mason bee casings and housings. Do I use inserts, or is this gift just yard art? Oh, if they're glued in, try to figure out a way to get those out. Because then you can't remove them. Get them out, put fresh ones in there that you can move around. Yeah, that's interesting that they're glued in. Yeah, it looks like that was to make it look real cool. Garden Sphere does have the wooden teardrops houses. We do sell those. And I'm gonna do, all right, I'm gonna hold off on the rest of the questions here, and we're gonna move forward. All right, so in July, June, March through June, they're busy. They're busy mason bees, busy pollinators. They're pollinating everything. They're laying eggs. They're just busy bees, right? That's where we get that busy bees. And then in July, you should start seeing in the first week of July or so, depending on our temperatures, all the mud. They should be mudded over. And this is where egg development is beginning, okay? If you want to protect your mason bees over the summer months and into the fall, I had mentioned earlier, you can use a piece of screening in the front, a nice air exchange, nice fabric can go over there. It doesn't have to be dark, just as long as there's a nice air exchange and you've kept it covered with a screening mechanism of some sort to keep flickers. I have lots of flickers, so I've got flicker invasion sometimes, and other pests, crows and whatnot will want to get in there. So you can always put some kind of light screening over the house. It's really helpful. August and November, we've got larvae development, a lot of growth. So July through November, we have just growth, development. I mean, they're doing all kinds of goodness inside those tubes and inside their cocoons. Harvest of the cocoons, you can go ahead and start taking your houses down in November and December, and putting them in a nice, cool, dry place. Most garages stay fairly cool, and so that's a really lovely place to put them. I would just recommend putting just a little screen, or put them in a mesh bag of some sort, so just in case something happens and it gets warm and you have some mason bees who are like super confused and like come out, or if you have a mischievous cat who likes to get in and play with things and take the tubes out like I do, they'll be protected. And this is a really cool time as well, because you can, if you have the tubes, right? If you have your hard cardboard tube and you have your inserts, you take all those inserts out and they're really easy to undo. And you can look inside at your cocoons and see the development. And this is where you're also going to be looking for any chalk brood or any mites. If you have like the tube is moldy and things like this, it's a really great time to just kind of check them out, do a little investigating to make sure your mason bees are in a nice, healthy spot. Again, here are some of our mason bee pests. The usual culprits are our flicker friends and our woodpeckers. The crows, they are mischievous. If you have ravens in your area, they will get in there. Squirrels, like my squirrel friend who decided to take the tube all the way out. They'll do it. They're mischievous. We all know how mischievous squirrels are. And so we've got some, pests that'll get in there. It's nature, so that, things will happen, but you absolutely can deter them with, just that mesh covering, it'll keep them safe. This is what I was talking about, some chalk brood. It almost looks as though the larvae, it looks kind of like a black mummy almost. It does break down into a very chalky black material. It's in a fungal infection, and the poor little mason bees, they die from that. And then I've had mites a few times over the last 10 years. I've had mites a few times, and you can really tell when you have mites is because it looks kind of, it's that right there. It's a picture right here, and it's this orangey, I don't even know. I mean, it's just this orangey color, and they eat those larvae like crazy. Now, you'll notice that this one right here, all this brown stuff around here, that's the frass, and that's the mason bee poop right there. It's very different from the orange pollen mites, that hairy footed mite there. So you can really see the difference. And this is one of the benefits to taking your inserts apart, because then you can take these little mason bee seed, the cocoons, you can take them out and get them away. You can use I like to use those little tiny, like Crayola watercolor brushes that come with them, because they're really delicate, and just kind of brush off all my cocoons if I have time, and if I'm really feeling motivated. I'll brush off all the frass, and I'll brush off if I can check if there are any mites. And I've actually been able to save some that had a few mites that got into a few other cocoons down the way, but they hadn't really invaded. And so I was able to save those cocoons. So it's one of those cool things about opening it up. It's a neat thing. But yeah, the fungal infection is really, it's so sad. I'm going to go ahead and check out the chat really quick. Yeah, so I hope I answered your question about storage. Like at my folks' house, we in the winter months, we store them in an old college refrigerator. We set the temp to about 40 degrees, and we keep them in there, and they stay nice and dry, and they're in an a really nice spot. It's very low humidity in there as well, so it's great. And then old garages are fantastic as well. The garage, again, stays pretty cold, but in a lot of cases it doesn't freeze because it is attached to the house. If you have a garage that's attached to the house, it works beautifully because the temps do tend to stay quite cool. You can store the cocoons in a lot of different things. So what I really like to do, and then you're also reusing a material, those the salad containers, those plastic salad containers. They're quite large, but if you put some fabric inside, right, and then you can set the cocoons on top. Right, you can stick an old dish towel or something in there, and you stick that on top. You poke a few little holes in there, just from poke holes for air exchange, and voila, you have just reused a material that we can't put it in our recycle bins here in Pierce County, but we can reuse it and reuse it again if you'd like. So any kind of container that has a little bit of an air exchange, and I like to put a fabric or a paper towel inside that can trap any moisture that might be built up at all in those containers. And you really can use anything. It doesn't have to be something big, but if you have a lot of mason bees, you can do that. And you can put the whole house, you could leave them in your tubes. If you don't want to take them apart, you leave them in the inserts and put all the inserts in there. And that's where that salad container really comes in handy, because it is a little bit bigger, a little bit longer. Yeah.
So let me throw out there.
Yeah.
You can, Jenny, recycle those plastic, well, they're not plastic, but the material that the salad bins are, you can take those to the recycle center and put them in the recycle center bin there, and they're mixed plastics. But I had people.
True. We can't put them in our bins though, so we would have to take those down.
Right.
Yeah.
But when the EnviroHouse was open, I had people that were coming in and showing me their bees, and they were keeping the cocoons in, because they had small amount. The plastic snap containers that cassettes when everybody had cassettes and they're not playing the tapes anymore,
Yeah.
but they still had a bunch of the plastic boxes.
Yeah.
So they were putting the cocoons in those and storing them. And then they could write on the top and put the date or whatever they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's accessible, just as long as there's some air exchange and something in there to wick away any moisture. So yeah, I mean, that's really creative using those old cassette tape containers. I love it. Yeah, that's a good one. And definitely not accessible to pests. I wouldn't throw out the whole tube there. You know what I would do if again, I have had mites in the past, and I use my brush and I brush it all off. And I get rid of the damaged cocoons with the mites, but there's always cocoons in that tube that aren't damaged at all or haven't been infested with the mites. And so yeah, those you totally keep. And that's where having the tubing, so these cardboard inserts, is really important, because or I guess it's not necessarily so important, but it can be really helpful, right? Because you can open them up and you can see everything that's happening. And then you can take the cocoons that are viable, you can put them into a safe place, and then you can discard the damaged and infested ones. With the chalk brood, I have not, knock on wood, I have not had any chalk brood. However, I have had friends who have had chalk brood, and most of the cocoons in the infested spaces were not viable. So it really depends. So you can get healthy cocoon out of the housings that have been infested. It just kind of depends on the severity of it, I guess, is what I'd like to say. Yeah, good question. All right, here's another time for a poll. Fruit trees. Do you have any fruit trees, or do you have early blooming pollinator plants? So yep, I've got fruit trees. I've got those stone fruits. I've got palm fruits. I have blueberries, strawberries, elderberries, all those good things. I have flowering perennials. Yay. Perennials are fantastic. Yay. Yes. So easy, because perennials, you don't have to plant again and again like you do annuals. I love it. This is good stuff. So a lot of you have fruit that needs to be pollinated, and you have non-fruiting perennials as well. That's awesome. This is good stuff. I love it.
I'll give that another second because we've still got some people answering.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Sounds like you got a lot of food out there, folks, for our bees, and that really is the most important part. Is if you have food for them to eat,
and if the timing is right, if the food is out when the bees are out.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll. We've got 73% participating at this point.
That's great. All right. Well, it looks like we've got a lot of food out there. That's good. A lot of pollinator food.
For anybody that's calling in and can't see this, we have about 83% with berries, strawberries, blueberries, etc., grapes.
Yeah.
78% with early flowering perennials, 65% with palm fruit, apples, pears, Asian pears, and 48% with stone fruit, such as plums and peaches. And this was a multiple choice. So,
yeah, cool.
Stop sharing.
All right. And here are our resources. I'm going to pop into the chat really quick here. Packets. You totally could put the desiccant packets in there. I think that's a really clever idea, because those come in so many different things. You definitely could, to keep that humidity, keep that moisture control, right? fungal. Yep, I addressed that. And then do you clean your cocoons? I take all the cocoons and wash them, and that seems to get rid of any of the mites. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I just use a very gentle brush, and I gently brush them off, get the frass off, if I'm feeling so inclined of taking them all down and going through that process. And I just gently handle them. And at that point, if I am taking the whole house down, I do the cleaning all at once. I did not address this, but cleaning the house, I don't use bleach. I use a lot of, I'm going to talk about that cleaning process right now. So, and that includes with the tubes. So when I take my house down, if I'm taking my house down and I'm storing it somewhere else and storing all of my mason bees in another location for the winter, I am going to take if I'm using the cardboard tubes, I'm taking all of my cardboard tubes out of that housing. And at that point, I can also clean and sanitize the house for readiness in the spring. And so I tend to use a hydrogen peroxide water mixture. I dilute the hydrogen peroxide, I give it a squirt, I wipe it down, and then I'll let it dry. And then I'll do that one more time. I stay away from any bleaches, any hard chemicals at all. I try to, you can also use a white vinegar mix as well to just gently clean your housing out. The tubes, so if you're using cardboard tubes, you're gonna take them out of your house. If you're leaving your cocoons in your tubes, then you're just gonna leave them there, put them back out in the spring, and all of your mason bees are gonna fly out of your tubes because they're gonna emerge from their cocoons, and they're gonna make their way to the front, and they're gonna fly out and start their work. Cleaning it out means that if you're using the outside cardboard, the hard cardboard, and the insert, you're putting it inside to each other like this, you are taking that insert, replacing it with a new insert, and that's as easy as the cleaning gets. I don't know how much easier you can get with cleaning. I've gone to the cardboard tubes because it is so easy. If you have the wooden block that separates into the pieces, okay, so you take the rubber bands off of your block, and you would, of course, after they've all emerged, or if you've taken all your cocoons out for the winter, again, winter is a great time to clean those out if you're storing your cocoons in another location. And I just take a toothbrush and I brush them out, clean out that frass, clean out everything out. I've done this before, and it works really great. And then I'll give it a little squirt of the hydrogen peroxide or vinegar, give it a little scrub, rinse it off, and then let it dry out completely before I reassemble my block and put the rubber bands right back on. Okay. And so that would be the cleaning process. If you have the solid block with the drilled holes, that is going to be a little bit trickier, and you're probably going to want to watch it. And if you're not seeing a lot of mason bees emerging, you see mudded over holes still at the end of April and moving into May, you may have some issues. And so I like to clean those. We do re-drill those holes every other year or every 2 years. So that's my recommendation. And that becomes so cumbersome, and it's like a whole nother job, making sure that they are straight when you're drilling it through and everything else. It's one of the reasons I've gone to the cardboard tubes, and those wood blocks that you can separate and clean. It just is so much more accessible. Let's see, we had one here. I hope I answered the cleaning process for you. It really isn't too difficult. You just have to kind of be mindful once or twice a year, just to kind of get it all set up, ready to go. It is. Even if you're in a wildlife sanctuary, I like that question. Is it worthwhile to start mason bees? You have mason bees at the wildlife sanctuary whether you have a mason bee house or not. Because I have a feeling that if you're in a wildlife sanctuary, you definitely have trees that flickers have poked holes in. Maybe you have down trees, maybe you have fence posts, maybe you have other things happening there. And because the blue orchard mason bee is a native pollinator, they find holes everywhere. You have wind chimes, and at the right size, they're gonna nest inside the wind chime. So, I think putting them where, if you are at a wildlife sanctuary and you have people visiting your sanctuary, putting them in an east-facing location where your visitors can get a first-hand look at the mason bee house and kind of watch it, especially if you have people who come quite frequently, they can watch that process. I think that's a wonderful thing. Even if maybe a flicker comes and eats a few out, that happens out in nature too. So you're kind of making a nice visual for your visitors at your wildlife sanctuary, to really kind of do some education on the spot piece. The bamboo tubes are fine. Just make sure that they're the correct diameter. Yeah, they're totally fine. They're a little bit harder to take apart if you really want to take them apart, but they're okay to use. Just make sure they're the right size. That's all. That's just making sure they're the right size. And again, if you could go through them if you want to see if you have any mites, if you have chalk brood, if you have any other issues with them, you would go, you'd want to see them. It's the health of the mason bees. You're really just kind of looking at the health of the mason bees at that point. You could just leave them there, and that's totally okay. Okay, that's totally fine. You can leave them there, not a problem. It just kind of depends on your time. Like this winter, I just didn't have time, and so I didn't take them down and open them and see them. So now I'm going to watch them fairly closely and see if I have a lot of emergence. If I don't have a lot of mason bee emergence, it means they're coming out of their tubes. Then I'm gonna try to make sure I make time next time to do that. And there are lots of ways that you can clean your mason bee houses. I just choose not to use bleach and use those more, the stronger cleaning materials. I try to keep it as light as possible and as less intrusive as possible. So, and then this is if you need mason bee houses, cocoons, if you need to get tubes, maybe you have a house and you just need replacement tubes or inserts. We have all those things at Garden Sphere. Lots of good stuff there, lots of help there. And then if you haven't registered or if you're interested in registering for any of the March or February webinars, that link is here as well. And then again, those of you who have joined us today, if you mention that you joined us for the Mason Bee EnviroHouse class today, Garden Sphere will give you 25% off your Mason Bee purchases for your Mason bees. If you need to go get yourself set up, purchase cocoons, get mason bee houses, all of that. Today and tomorrow, you'll get 25% off if you mention that you have joined us for this EnviroHouse class. So it's pretty cool. Nice little.
I just put that information in the chat again. And I assume that those of you who are on the call can do this. I've done it in the past and made it work successfully, but I think you can copy. You might be able to do a copy all CA. I do it so automatically. I mean, Control A, I think it is, copy all. And then just copy the chat, pull out what you want, or maybe you could just go in and copy the little bits you need. If you can't do that and you have problems with it, email me. I'll put that information in there and I can send you the information.
Yeah, and Garden Sphere is located in the Proctor district and right on Proctor, 34th and Proctor. You keep going right past Puget Park, you can't miss it. So you'll see a big burgundy truck out there. We call her Bertha. So, and it's always a busy place on the weekend. So it's right there in Proctor, North Tacoma.
If you look up on the website, just make sure you notice that it's .biz, B-I-Z, it's not a .com.
True.
Um,
Yes,
So
that is
that,
true.
and I just, well, maybe I didn't put it in. I thought I did here. Or not. Okay, so there's my information, email and phone number. The EnviroHouse is accessible for workshop signups at cityoftacoma.org/workshops. If you want to sign up for the fruit tree one. And then they're all online for the workshops through March. We will continue doing webinars for the immediate future. I don't know when we'll be starting workshops at the EnviroHouse again. We probably won't open until April, I'm hoping, but that room for workshops is so small that we probably won't start doing on-site unless they're outside until summer. We will be doing chickens with Jenny in March, urban chickens, and then another one on how to build a coop, secure coop. And the end of March, Jenny will be doing spring gardens on how to get your garden bed ready, what to plant, how to plant it, so on and so forth. April through July are almost all planned. So those are coming up. We will also be doing composting in March. So lots of good things coming up.
Yeah.
So check out what our resources are. And Jenny, there was one more comment in the chat before we end the webinar. Oh, I was going to mention also, it says in there the recorded webinars. Once this is, I will download this today or Monday morning. And then it takes media a little bit of time to get it uploaded into the city's YouTube channel. Everything that we've done so far is on that YouTube channel. So if you need to see this before it gets uploaded, you can go youtube.com/Tacoma/EnviroHouse, and you'll get the playlist for the workshops and the how-to videos. So you can look at the one we did last fall and until this one gets up.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And thank you all for joining us. This is fun. I love the Mason Bee one. It's one of my favorites. So.
Okay, well, I think that covers it. If you have any questions, let us know, and join us again for selecting your fruit trees. So because Jenny covers a lot of stuff besides just apples and pears. She gets into kiwis and all kinds of cool things. So
lots of fruits, like fruit salad.
Yeah. So we'll look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you for being here, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Great. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.
Bye, Jenny. Talk to you later.